ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار ثم ما بعد. Tonight I'm delighted to be amongst you once more, and we had a program with Grand Mosque to give a lecture about the science of narration, the science of Hadith in Islam, and it was thought first to be held in the Grand Mosque, but I said, lots of brothers are used to gather here. It would be hard for them, to move and go to the Grand Mosque. So let's make it here. So I asked our brother Muhammad, and he said, okay, no problem, we can make it here. So first to start is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has specified and distinguished the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam with a thing that is not found in any of the nations before it. That's the sanad. Sanad is like the chain of narration. The chain of narration, which means that everything that we have in our religion, every saying that we have in our religion, we know who said it and in which way it came to us. In what way it came to us. This is why some of the scholars of Islam said, Al-Isnadu min ad-din, وَلَوْلَا الْإِسْنَادُ لَقَالَ مَنْ شَاءَ مَا شَاءَ. He said, the Isnad, the chain of narration, is a part of our religion. If we were not to have the Isnad, then anybody would say whatever he wants. So in Islam, we have basics. And everything that we have chains of narration to it. So we know first the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first condition for every single verse of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be accepted is for it to come in a mutawatir style. What's the mutawatir style? Mutawatir chain of narration is that every verse of Quran is narrated to us by big groups of people, two big groups of people, which means Sahabas in their thousands used to memorize this verse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of the Quran, and they gave it to the next generation of Muslims, and the next generation of Muslims sent it to the next generation of Muslims. So it had groups upon groups upon groups of people have narrated us to us. Okay, have narrated us to us. So this is about Quran. This is about Quran. And so the Quran, in order to be accepted, must be narrated by groups and groups of people. So the isnad that we have in Islam is not known in any other religion. In any other religion. You could ask any Christian or any Jew to tell you the isnad between them and between the books that they have in front of you, they cannot give you an isnad. Or the closest things that they can give you are like 100 years after Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, or centuries after Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. And also the things that are, so we have things that are 100 years from Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. Then they have the people that narrated it. Then after that, who are the people that brought it to you? They cannot give you. Whereas in Islam, we have for every single ayah of the Quran narrations from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from his Sahabas to our day, to our days. This is, for example, of what we have about the Quran. We talk now about the Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was preserved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the same way as the Quran was preserved. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took upon himself and said, إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. Verily, we have sent down the dhikr. Dhikr means the Quran and the Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay? And we verily are the ones that will preserve it, that will protect it. So, how did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect Quran and protect the Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Allah protected it by narration, by isnad, and by people of knowledge. By people of knowledge that have worked for that. Quran, there are no doubts about Quran. There are no doubts about any single verse of Quran. Whereas the Sunnah, we have to work more on it. Because Sunnah, in order to be accepted, we don't have the condition of the tawatur, which means tawatur means for every single word of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be brought to us by large groups of people. Whereas, you must know that narration is either mutawatir or ahad, which means either centered by big groups of people, or ahad, which means sometimes its groups are smaller than that. So hadith can be mutawatir, which is groups upon groups of people, or can be ahad, which means that during the chain of the narration there must be some chains of it. Maybe one person was in that line, in the line of narration. So there are hadith that were narrated to us by one person from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For example, we have hadith إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, which is one of the best known hadith. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Verily, things are based on the intention. And the intention is the hadith that was narrated from Umar radiallahu anhu. And none of the Sahabas has narrated that hadith except Umar radiallahu anhu. From the Tabi'een, the second generation, none. There's only one person that narrated it to us. The third generation also, only one person. After that, lots of people narrated it from them. So this hadith is ahad. But when we go and look at the people that have narrated that hadith, we look at every person that has been in that chain of narration, and we know about every person who that person was. Who did he? First, we go to the highest level of narrators, who were the Sahabas of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The scholars of Islam have written lots of books to tell us about the Sahabas of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about each and every one of them that we know. Some of the Sahabas of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to narrate lots of hadith from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, some of them less. We have 7 of the Sahabas of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that narrated more than 1,000 hadith from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have others that have narrated hundreds of hadith. We have others that have narrated tens of hadith. We have others that have narrated some hadith, and we have others that have narrated only one hadith from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we know about every single one of the Sahabas of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when we go to the Sahabas, we don't look at their condition, because Sahabas of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam are all cleared by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and all praised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you go to the Sahabas, you don't have to look whether that Sahabi of Muhammad ﷺ was a liar or not a liar, whether he used to make mistakes or not used to make mistakes, whether he would say things that are forget or not forget, because they are all praised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and all cleared by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the main thing about the Sahabas is to know who is that Sahabi. That's it. But when you go to the generation that came after the Sahabas, you have to look at them. You have to look at them. And this generation is called the Tabi'een. Those that are the followers that came after the Sahabas of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We go to that generation, and we look at those people that narrate the hadith from the Sahabas. Most of the people that narrate the hadiths from the Sahabas, the Tabi'een, are people that are known to be righteous, and people that are known not to lie. So there are, most of the Tabi'een are not known for lying. So the lie is very, very, very rare in that time. So most of the Tabi'een are not da'if, or not, not unacceptable for the hadith. Then we go to the generation that comes after the Tabi'een, and this generation is like higher in number, and then it starts with a lot of people that start, some start people to lie in the hadith, some people started to not to be concentrated in hadith. So for these generations, the scholars of Islam have written books about each and every person that is in the chain of narration of these books. So for every person, you know who that person was. What was his name? What was his father's name? What was his family's name? What was his tribe? Where did he live? Where did he travel to? Who did he listen from? And who listened from him? We have everybody of these, okay? So we go, for example, he said, I narrated from this, and he narrated from me. He would say, now. But sometimes he would say, I heard somebody. Sometimes he would say, just from somebody. So sometimes, in the ilm of hadith, we would say, if he said, I've heard somebody, that's the highest level of narrating in the hadith. But sometimes he would say, from somebody else. So that in that condition, we go back to that same person and see whether that person used to make tadlis or not. Tadlis means like trying to cover things. Okay, because sometimes there were persons that would narrate from somebody that is weak, okay, in hadith. So they would hide that person, okay, and would say just from the other one. So the scholars of hadith would know whether the person that said this thing met the other person or not. Sometimes they will say, did they live in the same place? There was a possibility of them to meet, or did they live at the same time, so that they had the possibility to meet. And there is, for example, Imam al-Bukhari, in order to accept one narration, he said that his condition is for these two persons to have a great sign, or to have knowledge of us that these two persons actually met for that hadith to be accepted. So they must know that these two persons met in order for that hadith to be accepted. So in this way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved for us the hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And during the third century of Islam, third Hijri, in the 200s of the Hijri calendar, most of the books of hadith were compiled. Especially the two Sahih, the two books of Sahih, which are Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. These two books, were written in order to gather the hadith that was only Sahih. That was only Sahih. And the Bukhari has the highest condition in the Hadith. So his book has the highest condition of truthfulness, in truthfulness of the Hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Muslim has a lower condition, but it's also Sahih. All the Hadith that you find in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim are Sahih. After that, we have the Sunan. We have the Sunan Abi Dawud, Sunan Nasa'i, Sunan Tirmidhi, Sunan Abi Majah, Ibn Majah. So all these books also, most of the hadith that are in them are Sahih and Hasan. There are few hadith that are not Sahih in them, but most of the hadith that you find there are either Sahih or Hasan and there are few hadith that are not Sahih, that are weak in these books. So all the hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was compiled at this time. So we have, by the grace of Allah, gathered in books, in the first centuries of Islam. This is about hadith. Whereas also we have knowledge of other knowledge of sciences of Islam, like tafsir, or like maghazi, or the life story of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They are all in narrations. All the narrations. Arabs used to have narration for poetry too. Even for poetry, for everything, Arabs had used to have narration. But the main thing the most thing that we need is Quran and the Hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All of these are preserved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this way. And this is why we should be proud. We should be proud of our religion. We should be proud of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preserved for us the hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Up to this day, we have, because besides these books, there are other books of hadith that compile lots of hadith. So some books, had hadith that are sahih and da'if and not weak, and the other ways of hadith in it. So up to this day, we have scholars, Muslim scholars, especially hadith scholars, that work in the science of hadith, and work to tell us which hadith can be accepted, which hadith cannot be accepted. In this way, up to this day, this science, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept it to this day. And we have, and by Allah's grace, we had and we still have lots of scholars that work on it. And the most, maybe you all know him, the most known or most distinguished scholar in hadith was Sheikh Muhammad Nasiruddin al-Albani, who died like 16 years from now, rahimahullah. And he worked for more than 60 or about 70 years of all, his lifetime in the science of hadith, working the hadith for us. So this is was a brief lecture about the hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and how it was preserved to us, so that we know for everything in our religion how it came to us, and it's like Allah has distinguished for us. We are proud to have it. We are proud to have it. And as I told you can ask any other from non-Muslims. Okay, tell me, how did you? Who told you this? Okay, how did it come to you? It can also use it in Islam. Everybody that tells you something, you ask him, how did it come to you? Okay, سَمُّوا لَنَا رِجَالَكُمْ. Tell us who are the people that told you this are. Tell me, this is Islam. We know everything that we say, how it came to us. Wallahu ta'ala alam, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. First of all, Sunnah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah. We have, in the Sahih Hadith, in the Sahih of Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what is accurate. We have enough enough knowledge and enough hadith sahiha, you know, for us to go to the weak ones. You know, why do we need hadith that are da'ifa, whereas we have thousands and thousands of hadith that are accurate? Okay, and about the hadith that you just spoke about, one of the signs of a weak hadith, or especially this hadith that is, it looks like a mawdu' hadith, that is hadith that is, you know, like I was put in Islam, it's not like hadith that is not accurate, or a hadith that is, that was, we call it al-mukhtalaq al-masnu', which we call it like a created hadith that is not the same of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So whenever you have high numbers, you know, extremely high numbers of things, you know, and they are not, you know, you cannot, you know, just comprehend it, you know, it's a sign of the hadith that is mawdu'. A sign of hadith, sign of the mawdu' hadith, هذا أبو عمر حياك الله. A sign of hadith mawdu'. Okay, so first of all, as I told you, we have enough sahih hadith not to go to the other ones. The other thing is that when you some scholars have allowed for us to talk about or to use the da'if hadith in fada'il al-a'mal, which means in things that are extra, so like things that are like you know, like if you pray this and that rakat, you will have this and that you know, reward, as things that are not in the basics of deen. But if you look at this hadith, and this hadith says to you, if you do this and that, or you don't do this and that, you will burn in hell for these thousands of years. Is it about basics or something extra? You know, burning in hell, is it about basics or about extra things? It's about basics. It's about our belief. You know, it's about our belief, because, you know, why do we do good things? For us to go to Jannah. Why do we stray away from bad things? For us not to go to hellfire. Okay, so this is the basics of our religion. Okay, so basics of our religion should be based on hadith that are sahih. You know, and alhamdulillah, there are thousands upon thousands of hadith that are sahih. So we don't have to rely. No, this is not Bukhari only, but all the knowledgeable hadith say that for a hadith to be sahih, it must be رواية العدل العدل التام الضبط متصل السند غير معلل ولا شاذ, which means that the hadith, in order to be sahih, must be narrated from somebody that is adl, that is correct, okay, or that is righteous, okay. Who's righteous? Righteous is somebody that is a Muslim, that is a Muslim, that is not known to lie, that's not known to lie, okay, that is not known for bad things in his religion, okay, that is not known for doing things that are strange to his community, to his community, and he said, you know, first of it, he says to promote that person to be righteous. Adl, tam al-dabt means that he must know completely what he memorizes. Either memorized in his heart, knows by heart, or has written a book. For example, some ulama al-hadith would listen from their sheikhs, and they would write whatever they had. They had a book, okay? So this dabt, you know, like their preciseness is either precision in memorization by part or precision of their book, okay? So in both cases, they must be completely precise, okay? Not make mistakes, you know, many mistakes, because everybody makes mistakes, you know, but not lots of mistakes, okay? متصل السند, and the hadith must have also sanad متصل, which means that this person heard from that person. Okay, غير معلل ولا شاذ, which means it mustn't have an illah. Illah means like it means like ailment, like a thing that, for example, when you look, for example, this looks perfect, okay, but when you drink it, it may be poisonous, okay. So the ulama of hadith know the context of it, okay. So they say, for example, this hadith, it looks perfect, okay, but it has something secret, okay, that we take it away for that reason, okay, or not to be shadh, which means, for example, somebody has narrated something, but and he is strong in hadith, he's precise, but somebody that is more precise than him has narrated the opposite of what he says, or more or less that he says. Okay, that's shadh. Okay, that's shadh. It's called shadh in knowledge of hadith. And Bukhari had a special condition for the hadith to be sahih, which was that he had a condition that he had to have like they called it thubut al-liqa, which means that he had to have a confirmed meeting between the narrator and the one that he narrated from. Okay, he wouldn't. It wasn't sufficient for him, for them to live in the same period, for them to live in the same city or in the same country. Okay, no, he had to have a narration where it tells that I've heard from him, or they two met, or something like that, for them to confirm the meeting between them two. This is a special condition from Bukhari. This is why Bukhari has the highest condition of Sahih. Okay. Yes.
You mentioned confirming that two people have met. How did Bukhari? How did he do that?
This is knowledge. This is the scholarship. This is the deep knowledge that they had, because they had thousands and thousands of teachers. Okay, and they had different narrations from these persons. So sometimes in his Sahih, Imam al-Bukhari would give a narration that is, for example, حدثنا فلان قال حدثنا فلان قال حدثنا فلان قال أخبرنا فلان عن فلان, which means this person, talked to us about this from this person. He talked to us from this person. He heard from this person. That he said talked, heard, listened from this person, from that person. An is from that person. He didn't say, he neither said, I heard him, nor he said, I've listened to him. Okay? He said just an, from. Like he said, let's go back. So Bukhari, sometimes when he mentions hadith, after it, he may bring another narration, in which that person that said from mentions in another way, he said, I've heard this person say this. Okay? I've heard this person saying this. Okay? This is how he confirms that these people, heard from each other and met each other. Okay? Also met. And other scholars of hadith say if a narrator of hadith is known not to lie, is known for being a righteous person, and has lived in the same town, and we have the possibility of them to meet, that's enough. And that's what most of ulama hadith, take for granted. Okay, whereas Bukhari said, no, my conditions are higher than this. My conditions are higher than this. Okay, this is why Bukhari has the highest position in hadith. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to know if you could briefly, just you don't have to mention an example of each, but just briefly mention the classifications. Yes, there's Sahih, there's Hasan, there's Da'if, and there's the fabrication. But in them, there's, if I'm saying, I remember Hasan li Ghairi.
Yeah.
Can you mention those as well?
Yeah, my brother. You know, the highest hadith is the mutawatir hadith. The highest hadith is mutawatir, which was narrated from groups of people to groups of people. Okay. The other one is hadith that is sahih. Okay, sahih, which means hadith that was narrated by a righteous person from another righteous person. Okay. That person must be complete in his precision, preciseness of hadith. Okay, and doesn't have some strange ailment in it. Okay, and is not shad, which means that with not somebody that is more accurate than him didn't tell us something that is has different side. Okay, so this hadith is sahih. Okay, they said hadith Hasan is a hadith that the precision is not complete. It's not complete. It has like a bit, it has some weakness in it. Precision, preciseness is a bit weak, has some weakness in it. That's hadith is Hasan. Okay, that's Hasan li dhatihi, for itself. Hasan li dhatihi. But if the hadith is weak, for example, the narrator, has some problems in his preciseness, okay, and problems in his hearing or things like that, okay, it's hadith al-da'if. But if that hadith has many ways, many chains, okay, when these chains get together and each chain has like some weaknesses in it, if they get together, the hadith is called Hasan li Ghayrihi. Hasan for the other ones, okay? And if all the chains are not da'if, which means like very strange weakness, but the weakness is like low and like medium, moderate, okay? It can become Hasan li dhatihi, or it even become Sahih li Ghayrihi, okay? So if lots of Hasans are get together, it becomes Hasan Sahih li Ghayrihi, Sahih for the other's sake. Which means lots of narration got together and it became Da'if. Da'if is hadith that is, for example, was hadith in which many things happen for a hadith to be considered da'if. Okay, for example, a person is not righteous. Okay, a person is not complete in his preciseness. Okay, a person says things that are opposite to what people that are more knowledgeable than him say. Okay, a person used to lie in his life. For example, when he would talk to people he would lie. Okay, not lie in his life, not lie in the hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but lie in day-to-day life. Okay, so this hadith, his hadith is considered to be da'if. Is considered to be da'if. And after that, the worst thing is the fabricated hadith, which is mawdu', the hadith that was produced, fabricated, made up hadiths. Made up hadiths are hadith that were narrated by people that are known to have lied about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Lied, said that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said something and he didn't say it, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the hadith that is mutawatir said, man haddatha that I didn't say it, let him prepare for himself a place in hellfire. The hadith mutawatir. So even if you say not only against Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even if some people have fabricated hadith in order to protect Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and many of them have fabricated hadith about the values of some surahs of Quran. They said we intended for people to be more righteous and recite more from the book of Allah. So we fabricated hadith in order to for people to recite more from them. No, we don't need it. We don't need our religion is complete. We don't need anybody to fabricate something about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We don't need anything. So this hadith is the worst hadith. Hadith is mawdu' is the fabricated hadith are the worst of hadith. Yeah.
If someone says, there's Quraniyun, and they only believe in Quran, and say they see a Sahih or Mutawatir hadith, and they say this is, this is whatever, I don't believe it. Is this considered kufr or no?
Yeah. Not to believe in the hadith of Muhammad sallallahu is a way to get out of the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Just if it's Sahih or any...
No, and because Qur'ani, what does Qur'ani believe? Qur'ani believes that we have only the Qur'an. We don't need anything else, okay? So we'll ask the Qur'ani, do you pray? Okay? If he said that he prays, say, how do you pray? He will say, I pray 5 times a day. You say, okay, where do you find 5 times a day? You find it in Qur'an. 5 times prayers, you find it in Qur'an. Okay, tell him, how do you find that Fajr has 2 rak'ats, Dhuhr has 4, Asr has 4, Maghrib has 3, and Isha has 4. Where do you find it in Quran? You don't find it in Quran. Okay? You find it in Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Okay? So you don't find these things in Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, hadith that is also sahih, said, I don't want to make somebody that is, said, Shab'ana ala arikatih, which means he is fed up, he has a good life, he has a good position, okay, he has a good position, he's well fed, okay, he has a good position, he has a good nice place to sit on, and he said, whatever we find in Quran, that's it, okay, we don't need the hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, beware, because Allah subhanahu has sent down to me Quran, and similar to it also, it is Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is also wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in many occasions, told us that. For example, there's a hadith in which Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked about the shaheed, the martyr of battle. He said, does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive the martyr everything? Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, yes. Yes. Then he called, after a while, he called that person. He said, come here. He said, everything is forgiven to him except for dayn, which means the debt. Except the debt. Sarrani bihi Jibreel anifan. Jibreel just told me about it, I just heard Jibreel came to me and told me about that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives the martyr, shaheed, everything except the debt. Okay? Sarrani Jibreel bihi anifan, And there are lots of conditions which Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was told by Jibreel immediately about the things that he said. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just as He protected Islam by Quran, He protected Islam by Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So not to believe in Hadith is not to believe in Quran. Allah said, وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. He said, whatever Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us, take it. And whatever He's told you to stop from it, stop from it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so if you believe only in Quran, you have not believed in Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it means that you have not believed in Quran. You don't believe in Quran if you don't believe in Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم فإن تنازعتم في أمر فردوه إلى الله والرسول إن كنتم تؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر. Which means, all you that believe, all you who believe, obey Allah and obey His Messenger and those that rule you amongst you. Okay? And if you have things that you don't agree between you, He said, go back to where? to Allah and His Messenger. If you believe in Allah and His Messenger. If you believe in Allah and His Messenger. Okay? So you have to go back to Allah. How do we go back to Allah? To His book. How we go back to the Sunnah, to Muhammad sallallahu to His Messenger, to the Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So whoever says that Quran is enough, he is a big liar. Is a big liar, and that thing is a kufr in itself. It's kufr in itself. But we must take care that we do not call people kuffar and these things until we tell them about these things, that they understand it, and if they continue doing it, then they are called kuffar. And the person that makes this is somebody that has knowledge, not from somebody like from the street because that tells him, no, I've told him and that's it. No, he must, learn, know that he is doing a mistake and understand it, and then if he continues, he is a kafir. Allah A'lam.
There's a part like in the Masjid, subhanAllah, Hadith Sahahahu al-Albani.
Yeah.
Which is pretty like it had been revised by al-Albani.
Yeah.
On most of car, it's there like Hadith Sahahahu al-Albani. I mean, what's the story about such things? It is Hadith.
Yeah.
But it had been revised by al-Albani.
Yeah. Maybe you went away when we talked about this. The knowledge of the most of the books of hadith were compiled in the second century of Islam and the third one. Okay, by the 240s, 250s, we have most of hadith compiled in books. Okay, and we have like Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, which are books that have only hadith that are Sahihah. Okay. Then we have other books. We have like Sunan al-Nasa'i, Sunan al-Tirmidhi, Sunan Abi Dawud, Sunan Ibn Majah. Okay. These books have hadith that most of them are Sahih and Hasan, and there are also hadith that are Da'if. Okay. We have, for example, Musnad al-Imam Ahmad, which has more than 10,000 hadith. Okay. Which most of the hadith also are Sahih and Hasan in it, but some of the hadith there are Da'if. We have like Musannaf Abdul Razzaq, Musannaf Ibn Abi Shayba. These books have thousands and thousands of hadith, okay? And but these ulama have not put a condition on themselves to put every Sahih hadith in it, okay? So we need scholars to tell us which hadith from them is Sahih and which one is not Sahih. Okay, and one of the scholars that has worked a lot in it was Sheikh Muhammad Nasiruddin al-Albani, who was born in Albania in 1912. Okay, and then he moved. His father made hijrah from Albania to Sham, okay, in 1927 when he was 13, okay, like that. And they moved to Sham, and he lived in Dimashq, okay, for most of his life, and he was a great scholar of hadith, okay, a great scholar of hadith. He put more than 60 years of his life in the hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he write books about which hadith are, he had a big project which he called Taqrib al-Ummah Taqrib al-Sunnah Bayna Yaday al-Ummah, which means to approach the hadith, approach to the people, to the Ummah of Muhammad, Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because until recently, until some time, people used just to say, mention any hadith and say hadith sharif. That's it. Okay, and that hadith might be sahih, might be hasan, might be da'if, might be fabricated. Okay, so we need the scholars of hadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects deen by the scholars of hadith, okay? So the scholars tell us, this hadith is sahih. This hadith is not, it's not sahih. So we don't have to work with it because we have lots of hadith that are sahih, so we don't need it. Okay?
Yeah.
We don't need it. So this is why so he has become very popular, rahimahullah, because he worked a lot in hadith and he, spent all of his life in hadith. One of the beautiful things about him is that, for example, there was a library called Al-Maktab al-Zahiriyya in Damascus, and that library had thousands and thousands of manuscripts of hadith. And Shaykh al-Albani he used to repair watches and clocks. Okay, this is what he used to work for his life, and he liked the knowledge of hadith and the science of it. So he would go to the Maktab al-Zahiriyya, to this library, and stay there for hours and hours and hours and hours until they gave him the key to the library. Okay, and he made how do you call fihrist? An index of the books that are in that library. There are thousands of manuscripts that even the people that used to work in it didn't do it. So they gave him the key to the library, and he used to stay there for like more than 10 hours a day. 10 hours a day. He would work at his watch shop for like 2 or 3 hours a day, just to have enough to feed his family. And the other part of the day, he would go and work at the library. Nobody would pay him, nothing. He would stay 10, 12, 14 hours a day just in the library. Okay, so this is how he got the knowledge of hadith from manuscripts in books that are very, very hard to read and very hard to so he got all the hadith from them, and he complied with lots of books that are very beneficial. Very beneficial.
Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim and everything, were they like from the Sahabas or
no,
which generation?
No, they are from the 4th generation. The Bukhari, the highest hadith in Sahih Bukhari are the Thulathiyat, which means that only 3 persons are between him and the Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so that's the highest chains of narration that are in Bukhari are the Thulathiyat. It means that there are 3 persons between him and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because Bukhari died at I think he died at 256 Hijri, 156 Hijri, which means he died like 245 years after the death of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the highest level of narration that he has between him and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the Thulathiyat, which means only 3. But most of hadith, that narrations that he has, are like Ruba'iyat, Khumasiyat, Sudasiyat, which are like 4 people, 5 people, 6 people are between him and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
When you're reading hadith, how do you know what's fard over, what's not, in terms of, if it, from a regular Muslim standpoint, when you're reading hadith, how do you take this information and know what are the things that
well, alhamdulillah, today it's easy, alhamdulillah, it's easy. For example, most of books are revised and you have good reason. So if the hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim, you don't have to take care of it, okay? If a hadith is like in, it's narrated from like Muslim Imam Ahmad or Sunan Abi Dawud, Sunan Tirmidhi, Sunan Nasai, Sunan Ibn Majah, most of the hadith there are either Sahih or Hasan, okay? There are less, like a small percentage of the hadith that you find there are not, are weak, are weak. So most of the hadith that you find there are so alhamdulillah, most of the books that are written today, you know, are you know, have you know, people tell you the, you know, on the footnotes which hadith are you know, is, and if you find, for example, hadith that you know, Shaykh al-Albani says that it was sahih, so you know that it's sahih.
I was in Saudi for the last 2 weeks. Just came and going back. But one of the things that's very noticeable over there are these mutawwas, right? And they go, especially during the salah times and everything shuts off over there. And then if they see anybody, they will come and basically tell you to go, whether the person might be Muslim or not or whatnot. Especially when they see women with their head covers off, they'll tell them, hey, wear your hijab, who are you with, where is your husband, all that. I'm sure you're pretty familiar with it. So the folks I'm with, mostly all the Americans and everything, they were like, they basically have created this thing like, you know, Mutawwa University and whatnot, and you know, these guys force you. I mean, how can you force somebody? And they also basically tell you, I thought you guys say there's no compulsion in Islam, right? So why is it that these guys are forcing us to do this thing?
Okay, tell him why, for example, if you go in the States, can you cross the red light? Huh? Can you cross the red light?
No.
Can you drive 80 where it's 40? Huh? Without the troopers coming at your, you know, tail? Okay. Can you hit people in the streets? You know? Can you these are manners of Islam, okay? And you know, we have things in our religion, you know, in which we keep our religion straight, okay? So you as a Christian, we don't force you to become a Muslim. We don't force you, okay? As long as you live in a Muslim state and you pay the jizya, you're free. This is why Islam and Muslims never had a thing called Holocaust or called genocide happen in a Muslim place. Never. It never happened. For example, where are the greatest churches of Christianity? They are in Quds, Jerusalem, and they are in Syria, and they are in Iraq, and they are in Turkey. Okay, these lands were ruled by Muslims for hundreds of years. Okay, did Muslims anytime force the Christians or Jews that lived in Palestine, or the Christians that lived in Syria or Iraq, did they ever force them to become Muslims? Never, ever. Turkey as well, you know that the Orthodox Pope, because the Christians have the two greatest denominations. They have the Catholics, and the Orthodox Pope is in Istanbul. And Istanbul has been ruled by Muslims since 1462. So it's 1456, I think. Okay, anyway. It has been ruled by Muslims for more than 600 years. They have the Pope there. Okay. We in Islam never force people to convert to Islam by force. Never, ever. And for example, back home in Kosovo, they have the Serbian Orthodox Church. Okay, our countries was for like more than 600 years under the Muslim rule. Yet all the churches that they have, they still have them. Okay, nobody forced them to become Muslims. Nobody. You have Andalus, Spain, Muslim Spain. Spain was for more than 8 centuries a Muslim land. During that time, Muslim, Jews, and Christians used to live under Islamic rule. Were the Jews and Christians forced to become Muslims? Never, ever. Whereas at the other side, when Christians, conquered Spain, what did they do? They had the Inquisition, which never happened in Islam. They had Inquisition, which means that all Jews and Christians and Muslims were wiped out of Spain. Where did they go? They go to Muslim lands. Do you know that you still have Jews that have migrated to Muslim lands and still live in Turkey from the times of Inquisition? Now. No? And then, for example, when you have the Crusades, the Crusaders conquered Quds, Jerusalem, for 92 years. 92 years. They had Quds in their hands. During that time, Masjid al-Aqsa was turned into a garbage pit, okay, and a place to put pigs, okay, and no adhan was called for 92 years, okay, and all Muslims were massacred in Quds. All of them were massacred in Quds, okay. So when Muslims liberated once more Quds, did they do the same thing to Christians? No. They even left their churches there. They still have their main churches there from that time. Okay? Muslims never had this thing. No, never had these things. Okay? Never had these things. Okay? Wherever non-Muslims did these things, they did, and they tried to force people to become Christians, to become Jews. They ethnically cleansed Muslims from the lands that Muslims used to live. Whereas Muslims never did that. Never did in their history. Okay, because when you are a Muslim, you have to obey Islamic law. Whereas if you're a Christian, you are not forced to become, or a Jew, you're not forced to become a Muslim. No. But you have certain rules that you have to obey. But nobody forces you to become a Muslim. Nobody, never, ever. Okay. So when you become a Muslim, you must play by Islamic rules. So one of the rules is that men should pray in the masjid, and the stores should be closed during the prayer. Okay, that's a thing a way of protecting an order, in your country. So nobody would call to a Christian, go come to the masjid. No, nobody would say to them. Right? That's it.